Good morning, everyone. Um, Good morning or good afternoon, whenever this presentation is being shown. My name is Gabriel Ruiz. Today, I will be taking you to one of the most transformative periods in human history, the Industrial Revolution. This was more than just a change in how we made things. It completely reshaped economies, societies, and the relationship between humans and machines. We often associate the Industrial Revolution with smokestacks, steam engines, and crowded factories. But beneath those images lies a much deeper story about innovation, human ambition, and unintended consequences. This project is going to be divided into 6 parts. The first part being historical context. The Industrial Revolution began in Britain in the mid-18th century and continued until the 19th. At the time, Britain was a powerful empire with access to global trade routes, colonies rich in raw materials, and a growing population. But the real trigger was a convergence of factors. Before the revolution, most people lived in rural areas and worked in agriculture. Goods were produced by hand or in small workshops. This was known as a cottage industry or domestic system. It was slow, inefficient, and limited in scale. However, things started to change. The Enlightenment has sparked a culture of innovation. Scientific thinking was influencing practical inventions, and crucially, Britain had a unique combination of coal, iron, capital, and labor, all the ingredients for industrial growth. Part 2. Key technological advancements. One of the earliest and most iconic inventions was the spinning jenny, invented by James Hargreaves in 1764. This device revolutionized textile production by allowing a single worker to spin multiple spools of thread at once. Soon after, Richard Arkwright introduced the water frame, which used water power to spin cotton at an even faster rate. These innovations moved production from small homes to centralized factories, making the birth of the modern factory system. Then came the steam engine, perfected by James Watt in the 1770s. This was a game changer. Steam power made it possible to build factories anywhere, not just by rivers. It also revolutionized transportation with the creation of steamships and later railroads. The railroad was more than just a fast way to travel. It was a symbol of progress. It connected cities, boosted trades, and allowed raw materials to be transported efficiently. The famous Liverpool and Manchester Railway opened in 1830. This marked the turning point in railroads. The railroad was more than just a fast way to travel. It was a symbol of progress. Another key invention was in iron and steel production. The Bessemer process, developed in the 1850s, made it easier and cheaper to mass-produce steel. This would become essential for building everything from bridges to railroads to skyscrapers. And let's not forget communication in 1837. Samuel Morse introduced the telegraph, allowed people to send messages over long distances in minutes rather than days. It laid the groundwork for the global communication networks we depend on today. Part 3. Key factors behind the revolution. So why did this all happen in Britain first? There's several key factors why this happened in Britain. I'll only be naming 6. So the first one is natural resources. Britain had abundant coal and iron, crucial for powering machines and building infrastructure. 2. Agriculture revolution. Just before industrialization, Britain experienced an agriculture transformation. Innovations like the seed drill and crop rotation boosted food production, freeing up labor for cities. Point 3. Capital and banking. British banks were stable and willing to invest in new ventures. A growing middle class was looking for opportunities to make money. Point 4. Political stabilities and laws. Britain had a relatively stable government and strong property laws, which protected inventors and investors. 5. Colonial Empire. Britain's gold empire provided both raw materials and markets for finished goods. 6. Innovative culture. There was a strong culture of experimentation supported by institutions like the Royal Society, entrepreneurs, inventors, and thinkers. They all worked together to turn ideas into practical tools. Part 4. Social and economic impact. Now I want to talk what this all meant for people. On one hand, the Industrial Revolution created unprecedented economic growth. Goods became cheaper and more available. Cities expanded. Jobs multiplied. The middle class grew. Standards of living, at least for some, gradually improved. But like everything that has a good side also has a dark side. For example, factories were often dangerous. Child labor was widespread. Workers toiled for long hours in unhealthy conditions for low wages. Urban areas became overcrowded and unsanitary, leading to public health crises. This period also deepened economic inequality. While factory owners and investors became incredibly wealthy, many workers lived in poverty. This led to new social tensions and eventually the rise of labor movements. The Industrial Revolution also changed gender roles. In the early phases, women and children were seen as cheap labor. Later reform movements began to fight for education, labor rights, and suffrage, especially for women. Part 5. Global impact and legacy. Although it began in Britain, the Industrial Revolution soon spread to Europe, States, and beyond. Each country adapted in its own way. In Germany and the US, for example, industrialization arrived a bit later but took off rapidly, especially after the American Civil War. Japan also underwent a rapid industrial transformation during the Meiji Restoration. The global economy became more interconnected. Colonies were drawn even deeper into the industrial world, not as equals, but as sources of raw materials and markets for industrial goals. This helped fuel imperialism and competition between industrialized nations. Technological innovations didn't stop, of course. In fact, the Industrial Revolution laid the foundation of the modern world, from the computer to space exploration of renewable energy. So, in conclusion, what can we take away from all of this? The Industrial Revolution was not just a period of new machines. It was a revolution in how people lived, worked, and thought. It showed us the incredible potential of human innovation, but also took the risks of unhacked progress. As we move forward into our own era of rapid technological change, whether it's AI, biotechnology, or climate technology, it's worth remembering the lessons of the past. Innovation can transform the world, but it must be guided by ethical responsibility and social awareness. Like I said in the beginning, my name is Gabriel Ruiz, and thank you everybody for listening to my video.